think you can tell I'm feeling quite romantic. I've discovered the jokes about all that stuff there. The red, white and blue, the Phrygian hat, the fridge that is associated with the weather patterns that the gods need to use to end every human conflict. And this is the day after I made the video about the Rothschilds and the world's financial institutions owning the world and running its politics like a puppet show. That was the analogy of the Rothschild pimps, the Barbara Windsor story, and all of the trivia that Ali G stacks up on that little instrument there. That's Madge again, the woman who could be the saviour of the world. And there are some women in this story, but the main brigands are in the male gender, as always. Okay, it's about the Roman Church, the creation of the Roman Empire, and the dismemberment of the last resistance and the last three kings. Yeah, and the red, white and blue did not kill them off. It was not the revolutionaries what did it. It was the Roman generals at the bridge in Pontus defending the right to abuse the whole world and to create what Berlusconi took from Genoa into the US summit. That Berlusconi took to the UN summit in Genoa as a laugh about the ownership of this place. That was within weeks of them blowing up the Twin Towers in that place. And there's the shagging the women in the back room joke. That is also part of the gods and goddesses story that I'm going to reveal to you, and it does not impress Shania Twain, because she's a bimbo, and what it takes to change this is spirited women. If I'm underestimating you, Shania, please get in touch and let me know that you are working again for the ordinary people that are the victims of all of this in this domain. Yeah. Right. So, what I discovered this morning was the links again to Mithridates and how important it is in world history. Now, you may be a bit turned off by the my switch from facts on the ownership of the world and the fact that nobody owns the issuance of money for their wallets any longer. But I want you to understand the gravity of the jokes that they share for thousands of years, and that because of the ancient events that occurred when the kings were free and the Far East and the Middle East was actually still being contested by the Roman nations, and a man called Mithridates VI of Pontus. Now, I used to be a fan when I was a youngster of a story about Horatio, and Horatio is at the bridge with three people defending the future of Rome. It's a parody for what went on in the Black Sea region way back when the three generals were actually Roman generals. One of them was Pompey. The other two will come up in the story later on. And Caesar, Julius Caesar, with the same initials as Jesus Christ, who's part of the joke about the Mithraeum. And what we've got here are links to Mithril, the Mithraeum, Mithra, the god for the pagans, We've got references to the sun god, and the sun god is shining brightly today, and the snow is entirely due to the releases that I made yesterday about how the world is now run. So let me just tell you a little bit more about the history. And you notice in that bundle of non-existent currencies that I've left at the leopard's feet to try and tweak Miss Twain's conscience about the state of the world and the millionaires that she has joined, depriving the working families of everything that they could share in a proper democracy. I'm now going to take you on to ancient history, and it might turn some of you off, but I'll try and keep this video quick so that you can learn about the links to the modern day campaigns and Winston Churchill's genocides with the Rothschilds, that's the PIMPS, in all of the news media sectors, all of the government sectors, in every country across the globe now. They have the capacity to issue the world's democratic funding, but they do not issue it to the democracies. They steal it from them and they tuck it away in havens, which is not part of this little story today. So the Romans are ambitious. They're ambitious enough to create the Church of Rome along with the Jews, and that comes into the conclusion of the story and all of the multicoloured stories that explain the creation of the EU, the dismemberment of the EU, how people went east and west, young man, to destroy the world using the YMCA, young man, Christian gay jokes that the village people shared with the world. So back to ancient history, and let me tell you about, I discovered this in a Columbia University website, which is an encyclopedic creation. It's full of facts, and the last king, Rome's greatest enemy, is way down in the bottom, and it's cited as a reference to the story I'm going to tell you now. And I don't know, it's too bright today, thanks to the sun god, to be able to show you much on my computer screen, but I can try. And what you've got, the column thing and the ancient temple, is a pivotal part of every global Freemason's life. And I explained to you yesterday how or 2 days ago, how people like Rich Hall and the comedians manipulate these ancient stories and turn them into vicious jokes about black men being members of the Masons and the KKK just stringing the black men up as they sign up for their country and are conscripted into war as useless slaves, because now the troops have replaced them with tanks, and the people in America have sent them to the city to be dismembered by drug addiction and poverty, and the internal combustion engine has replaced them. That's a modern story. So let's get back to Mithridates VI of Pontus. Pontus is a name for a bridge, and a ford is the name for the author of The Last King, Rome's Greatest Enemy, published in New York by Thomas Dunn Books, 2004. That is the year that they swept back into Baghdad. The Baghdad is a joke about the Mithridates bloodline and the man that used the big hat with the bunny ears on it that I showed you in yesterday's video. It's all part of the big ears joke that is part of Beaverbrook's joke as they commit genocide in World War II, and he runs the Daily Express, and he is the boss for the man that was murdered or killed and executed, the man Joyce, who became Hitler's propagandist Lord Haw-Haw. They're all in the same team. It's all pre-planned, and the jokes about Noddy and Big Ears use the red, white and blue colours that are in that bundle on the floor, and they are the icons for revolutionary Europe, where Napoleon culled 600,000 innocents so that the elites could keep the numbers down and the Rothschilds could fund both sides, and then they started sequestering the banks. That is modern history compared to this. But I've told you that the Ford character is now, so there's another contender for Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. This is a man that understands the dismemberment of the world's freedom, and all of the jokes about the ancient battles in regions that are terribly important for what should be Russian oil wealth, but it is in fact now G8 countries' oil wealth. That's the genocides on the Russian steppes that were committed to get the Russian oil out of the Russian steppes and into the Rothschild portfolio, with Winston Churchill helping to commit the genocides, and the Balfours helping out with the completion of the story and the creation of the Israeli nation, the promised land that is used as all of the diasporas are prompted by all of the corrupted leaders and the pimps in those financial institutions and in the royal bedrooms. Okay, so I've got the fifth column. Mithridates VI is the last bastion and takes it to the bridge at Pontus. So all of that story that I learned about the three brave Roman soldiers defending Rome is a parody on this story, and it explains the father of the EU, because a pseudonym or nickname for Mithridates VI was Eupater. That's father of the EU, and you know the mess that is the premeditated plan that is the EU, that even Mrs. Thatcher disapproved of. I'm in harmony with her on that issue. It was created by people like Mrs. Thatcher and the European leaders and all of those bastards who met in Genoa so that the Twin Towers could be brought down the same year, and they continue with the brutalisation of what could be our civilised world. Right then, I'll try and take you down some of the facts that I've highlighted. It will not take me very long, and I hope you don't get bored with it, because it is about ancient history and the capacity of the Freemasons and the secret societies all around the world to laugh at their sick jokes. It's too bright. I do not want to lead you into darkness, so let's just see if we can you see any of that? That says Golog in sign up. That's something to do with the Columbia website designers referencing, and it's the Columbia Encyclopedia, Mithridates VI of Pontus, and I've got there in red, white and blue the father of the EU Eupater jokes. That's red, white and blue, which are the colours for Noddy and Big Ears and the propagandists in World War II that are still laughing about them owning what became the Romans' world and is now the G8 project. The G8 are the owners of everything on our globe, and they are the owners of NATO's armies. Okay, Mithridates VI. I think I'm not going to be able to show you the images but I'll just read it out, and you can go to this website. I'll cite the URL for it at the bottom. Don't know if you can still see me. The sun will be shining brightly on my bald spot on my head. Okay, this is the story of Pontus and the battles at the bridge, and the stories are told by Ford. Now, when I visited Washington, they had an issue about not creating bridges where there was higher ground around them because of the fear of assassination on the bridge. And that is a legacy of the European superpowers killing the man on the Hume Bridge in Sarajevo. That's the Archduke Ferdinand. Okay, all of it sung about by ABBA, and as the soldiers come in, ABBA sing about it again, and as the central bank is sequestered in London because of the Waterloo issue, ABBA sing about it again. Gimme, gimme, gimme a gimel after midnight so that we can have a joke about the the gambling that steals the world and all of its links to the horsey piso joke. I discovered last night that piso in Spanish means home or flat, and when you look it up now on all the hyperlinks that come up when you look for piso on the internet, you get the capacity to build beautiful kitchens and to put a mosaic on the floor, like the mosaics that I've shown you on every Christian church and on the floors of all of those big diplomatic buildings that are the OECD, the Rothschilds creations, and that is the equivalent of the red light district in our political world now. Right, Pontus. Okay? Now we've talked about the Russian steppes, we've talked about Winston Churchill brutalising it, and we've talked about the genocide that resulted in Armenia. That's in a much more modern set of conflicts. It's all linked to retelling the same story again and bankrupting the participant nations for the pimps in the financial institutions. Okay? Mithridates, 131 BC to 63 BC, so that's about 70 years of life. King of Pontus, sometimes called Mithridates VI or the Great. He extended his empire until, in addition to Pontus, he held Cappadocia, Paphlagonia and the Black Sea coast beyond the Caucasus. That's the cappuccino joke, my favourite coffee. I'm addicted to it in both hemispheres, and sometimes I drink up to 6 cups every day, and it's harmless, but that is part of their joke. It became Julius Caesar with the initials JC, like Jesus Christ's personal estate between the Black Sea and the Italian nation, and way to the north of the crossing the Rubicon. The Rubicon now is just a marshy region. It is all a pathetic story, and it is written into legendary tales that make schoolboys like me inspired by everything, including the Christian soldier's hymn that has a uniform and a sword or an automatic weapon in it. That's the male gender thing. I cannot get rid of that. Okay, I now understand that it is shameful and needs to be explained to the Jews that are the victims of the same type of scams. Okay, right. The first Mithridatic War, 88 BC to 84 BC, was the result. Mithridates conquered the whole of Asia Minor, except for a few cities. In 88 BC, in 88-5 BC, the Roman general Fimbria attacked him in Asia Minor, and he was defeated simultaneously with the destruction of his army in Greece. I've got this highlighted in yellow for the pimps in the Rothschild chambers. In the resultant treaty, Mithridates paid an indemnity and gave up all but Pontus and a few colonies. That is the sullied joke. The second Mithridatic War was begun by Sulla's lieutenant Lucius Murena, and that is the Lily Marlene joke. She was in the back room in Germany in the lead up to World War II, she was released into America, where she had a reputation as a Nazi in, believe it or not, 1945. And to get her reputation back, they had to make songs and movies about her working in the Western sector. So she was dancing with her petticoats greatly on display, and all of her underwear and her silk stockings was to be seen by every one of the troops that Bing Crosby sent to their deaths over there. Yeah, and that was the survivors and the profiteers. All of the troops who went over there were already dead and part of the war graves tourism industry. Okay, so Lucius Morena. Lucius is a pseudonym for the devil, and that is why the Lucy show was made. Okay, and Lily Marlena was a double agent. She worked in the back room like Bing Crosby, the war profiteer, and Bing Crosby makes all those movies about Hogan's Heroes right up into the 1970s. So Lily Marlena had to make a film with my favourite actor James Stewart called Destry Rides Again, and after she made that and showed her assets in the underwear sector and the silk stockings and the tops of those assets, she was able to become an all-American hero post-war, post-cull, when the war dead graves were created and became the attraction in Europe. Okay, and the links to Gabinius and the Gavin jokes and the G jokes. When I showed you the video yesterday about the G-rated movie that was the whorehouse in London, that was the cover-up for all of the Cold War scandals, that's Personal Services, it was G-rated. That is a joke about it being rated by the Father God in the skies, and the Pythons team have now suffered for that because the Life of Brian actor is dead in his 40s. Okay, but they should always look on the bright side, as God laughs at their jokes and is now beginning to make a massive comeback that has every one of them quaking in their jack boots. Okay, Lucullus was sent against Mithridates, who was finally forced to flee to Armenia in 68 BC. So this is even before the Christianity fraud was officially launched, but you now know the stories about the Mithraea, and look at the name of that guy, Mithridates. It's the launch of the Mithril joke and the underworld planners, who are the world elites, who cross all of the religious and geographical borders to have a good orgy with their mates in the Mithraeum. That's 68 BC that Lucullus was sent against Mithridates, the last free king who was prepared to take Rome on, and that was his flight to Armenia, where the genocide was committed by Winnie Churchill, who was prepared to fight them on the beaches, but he was in the pinstripe suit and singing in his bath as he carried on with his addiction to alcohol and British American tobacco. In 68 BC, the Romans invaded Armenia but were forced to retreat. Mithridates returned to Pontus, and Lucullus was replaced by Pompey. The up Pompey jokes for the red, white and blue team. Okay, I explained it to you yesterday. They were directed by people with the Aryan labels all over the frontispiece to their big jokes about living under Vesuvius when Vesuvius erupted onto the authors of the Christian Bible. Okay, Pompey soon drove Mithridates eastward, and the king fled to the Crimea, where we get weather like that when the French with the Brits are engaged in the killing of their own troops, in the charge of the Light Brigade, another botched campaign, and in the sinking of the ships in the Crimean harbour in the Sebastopol region. where they knew that none of the troops, the poor troops, would return to their homes. They were fighting the Russians for everything that could still belong to the Russian people, but is now belongs entirely to Putin and the Quisling leaders and the millionaires like the Alexei Miller character that is the boss at Gazprom, which has 44 subsidiaries to the west of Amsterdam and several in South Africa, where the Duplessis are still in charge of British American Tobacco and are linked to Cardinal Richelieu in this massive ruthless team that owns the world and passed it over to Churchill and Beaverbrook and Noddy and all of the people that Shania Twain rightly denounces as having no bravery anymore. Okay, it is tragic, and this is multicolour coded now on here because of the launch of all of the colours, the greens in America in Germany rather, and it was Gerhard Schroeder in Germany who insisted on the closures of all of the Baltic power stations which were nuclear fueled, as they trade in nuclear weapons, and his mates from Göttingen, oh no, I'm going to lose I thought I was going to lose my access to the computer. I better put the camera down and just keep talking because I need both hands to keep the electricity flowing into my computer and to fill my mind with these ideas and explanations for why everybody in the ordinary working men's sector is facing the loss of their pay rise, the loss of their home, the loss of their spouse. All of it is ever so clever and is entirely planned by these bastards that are in the pimping sector that ran the British monarchy for 160 years. Okay, so we've been forced out to Armenia. In 68 BC the Romans invaded Armenia and the king fled to the Crimea, the last of his provinces. He had a slave kill him. Okay, that's falling on his sword like the Japanese have to do all of the time when the G8 call them to make the sacrifice and to steal from their citizens and to make songs about being big in Japan, which is a sexual connotation, and all of it is a ruthless. The hyperinflation in Japan now is as big as it was in their lead up to their intervention at Pearl Harbor, which was entirely pre-planned by Brandeis and the character Brandeis and Untermeyer, the first two Jews on the Supreme Court in America before Bill Clinton put another 3 in there. Okay, got working class Geordie passing by. She's a really nice person, but she's involved with horses, which makes me a wee bit nervous. Okay, so Pompey soon drove Mithridates eastward and the king fled to the Crimea. He had a slave kill him. His fall is the subject of Racine's Mithridate, the racing sector, the horsey sector, the betting sector, the gimel at midnight. Pharmacies the second was his son. That's the pharmacy joke. I'm a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society, but they have stripped me of my right to work because it is now led by midwives and people that were never dentists but were leaders of the dental profession. Before they began to take huge takes, they launched the shipment joke, and they began to launch the retraining of every working professional every week of their lives for the rest of their lives, so that they could not turn their heads to the political abuses and the genocides that are occurring in other countries. The pharmacists are beginning to warm up to the fact that I'm trying to get them some decency back, but they're ever so content with their role, work like a slave, even on a bank holiday, let the medics who are further up the profiteering food chain and get all of the polypharmacy bribes. Yeah, it's all a stitch up. So, and you got the Tigranes joke, that's the tale of the tiger story, and Prince Philip, the land grabber and the sexual deviant, was able to kill tigers in the 1960s in India and put the pictures on the front page of the papers. Okay, everything is now owned by the people that came together and are linked in to the Roman roads and then the Go West young man stories. Okay, the rabbits, and I've split that up into Ra. Ra is the sun god or the god in Egypt, and then I've got in white the BB bit, because the B'nai B'rith is a massive part of the Israeli underground training, and then the last bit of that is in blue, and that is the TS bit, because the T is the Christian cross, and you bringing together you get the rabbits, the linking of Christianity and the massive fraud, and the Jewish nation and all of its profiteers led by the pimps in the Rothschild institutions. Then they become the icons for Germany in the pre-war pacts that are made, and the colour for Germany is green, the colour for Ireland is green, and the EU, okay, and the global village people, I've put that in purple because it is a really abusive project and it is a massive change towards political correctness and the cross-gender issues that we have that are laughed at in the YMCA, and now we have Jewish female rabbis. Isn't it clever that you can fuck up the world and the right to work and keep people enslaved by the fear of the loss of their jobs or the capacity to practice what they're already masters of, so that the profiteers in pharma and the pharmaceutical industries and the civil service can profit because they're friends of the Rothschild pimps. Okay, and dismemberment of Europe, then the world. His son-in-law, the name is also spelled Mithridates, okay, and that was a link to a couple of women, but I seem to have lost the link there. So that's as far as I got. Oh no, here we go. So Pharnaces II, his successor was Pharnaces VI. So he committed suicide because the Romans were too powerful for him, or the Freemasons were too powerful for him. And let me just read out, because this is a bit ironic, I think. It may be over your heads, but please try and see the magnitude of their jokes. So he reigned from, this is Mithridates, this is his successor, I think, Pharnaces II of Pontus. Father, Mithridates V of Pontus. Oh no, so this is the story about Mithridates VI. So his successor was Pharnaces II of Pontus. His mother was Laodice, that's spelled Laos, like Laos in Vietnam, which became part of their empire in the Middle East and the Far East when they brutalized it, when Muhammad Ali refused to fight in the battles. That's Laos, where they dismembered the American troops by addiction. They created the cocaine plants in the Coca-Cola plants, and the dice bit is a joke about the dreidel. Okay, and Eurydice is the woman that sings in a legendary way in the opera sector that is run by people like the Poof that made the Lord of the Rings story. He's got loads of directorships, and I've got a signed copy from my brother-in-law, the Poof, that has dismembered his dental sector and is now charging every dental student in England £9,000 for their education per annum. He got that for free, and then when they get trained by him in the continuing professional development sector, that is him who is unable to practice any longer, giving them the right to work. So the man who's got all the registrations in the art sector, in the opera sector, along with the Rabat's woman, which is an overt joke about what happens in Finchley Road, and the links to the rabbits and the pikeys that we've told you about. Okay, you can see Boromir with his so far so good Jewish icon in his mouth. There is Ian McKellen, the man that pretends to be the saviour of the world with the pointy hat. He's suppressed the Phrygian hat, he's brought the Jewish hat back in, and when I told you about the triumph that they had in Czechoslovakia, which is no longer Czechoslovakia because of all of these scams and the father of the EU joke, McKellen has signed this copy, and all of it is a joke about globalized village people. Okay, I'm going to stop there now, and because I don't want to confuse you anymore. It's quite complicated understanding ancient history, and I think there are some more comments at the bottom about the Father God that I'd better get in case the sun dips behind the cloud. Okay, so Mithridates, and this is another subsection of the same encyclopedic reporting from the Columbia University. Okay, Mithridates, or Mithridates the Sixth, from Old Persian Mithradatha, gift of Mithra, also known as Mithridates the Great, Megas. So, another pseudonym for this man. This is the last man to be suppressed and a great threat to the Romans at the bridge. His other nickname is EU Pater Dionysius. Okay, they keep telling the same story over and over again, and it's anal, and it is an analogy to, in this case, the Father God in the red, white and blue sector, which they know is dead in the water that they have salted already. Okay, and there are the names of the three prominent generals: Lucius Cornelius Sulla, Lucullus and Pompey were the people that are in the story about Horatius at the bridge. It's been written out of history. You can find a few of the elites in England making stories about it and poems about it on YouTube, but nothing is the truth. Okay, he was also the greatest ruler. This is Eupater Dionysius, pseudonym Mithridates the Sixth, and all of the links to Mithra are all of the links to the elites for centuries and right back to 150 BC. Okay, they've got the Dada joke into their story again, and the linkages to the New Kirk and the rabbis and the rabbits and the people that are on the operatic sector boards in London with Ian McKellen, the wizard Gandalf. Yeah, it is the saddest story ever told by the world, and I know that God has put the sun out and the snow down this morning, and I know that God understands that the words of that Madonna song are about the universe that the gods have created. It's perfect, and they are perfectly in control of everything that is happening. I'm their puppet on a string, and I'm just letting the news out about how the Freemasons and the PIMPS and the Rothschild financial institutions have stolen it. Okay? Nothing is, what was it that Madonna sang in that song? Nothing is indestructible. Yeah? The Crimean War was ended by the snowstorms and the launch of the Balaclava. Some people came back. The only thing I got from my father-in-law as an inheritance is a balaclava. He was a member of the team, and he used to wear his chain of office in the Probus Club. He'd done his service to the business world, and he has dismembered the whole of our nation's capacity, like the other people in the Probus Club and my friends and neighbours that used to be Santa Claus in Hexham. Yeah, they're young enough still to be given a conscience about this, but none of them will talk to me, because they know I'm onto how they steal from their own children. That's the man from, I forget what, there are several tiers of membership in the capitalist secret societies. I've given lectures to them. They now know that my story is the truth, and that many of them are getting pathological syndromes that make them regret their entire life in business and the asset stripping of everything that used to belong to our country. Okay, I've got nothing else to say except that the Seleucids now appear in the story, and that is the Punch and fucking Judy joke about the woman killing the lover in her bedroom when she got him pissed at the cheese and wine party. Isn't it funny? And that has led to the ownership of New Zealand, and nobody but me and you, that's the 32 or 40 people that had the patience to look at it. Zealand is also in this story. There's a Zealand in the Mithridates portfolio of estates before it was stripped back to the one surviving member, and he fell on his sword on behalf of the power of Rome. I forget what Gladiator says in those heroic looking segments of his movie, but when you listen to the Gladiator theme that is actually got the Hebrew text in it as the subtitles, you can hear the Jewish music is part of the Christian triumph. It is really, really sad, and I'm going to sign off there now and publish that video. Okay, I just want to make sure. So that is just another part of the story. There's Darius is in it. Darius is part of the comedy team. Yeah, all on the BBC, and the BB bit, the Benai birth bit, is part of the BBC false news joke with the pimps and all of the things that they release when they're in a crisis, like they were cast into yesterday. Yeah, the revelation that everything that happens with Christine Keeler and the pimps and the bedroom bosses in Wimbledon that run the brothels, it is shameful. That is how our world is now run, and that is why we've got those sad stories to tell. The red, white and blue is particularly tragic. The man I could not remember yesterday was the Marquis De Sade, a deviant in everybody's bedroom, with or without silk stockings. Regardless of the port of entry, he would lop the heads off his victims. As a climax to that, he was described in his portfolio as he played his part in the brutalization of the whole of Europe in the revolution as an aristocratic revolutionary. It's like the term socialist. I discovered the joke about Skokie, Illinois in The Usual Suspects is about a place where they had more Jewish refugees in the Windy City, Michigan region of North America, and that is about people. The story is written by people who are friends and fans of the Jews in the Central Court, in the Supreme Court in America, who extended World War II from 1917 to 1919 just because they had the power to issue the false news and to brutalise the world. And the Skokie, Illinois place now has a Holocaust memorial. I'm going to stop there. Everything is a crime against the world's innocence, and you need to wake up to it, and we'll get superb weather like this when you persuade the politicians that are incapable of fighting any battles because they're physical cowards and mentally they have been picked for their sins and their weakness. Yeah? I'm going to stop there. And mentally they are much stronger than you in their capacity to make you believe their stories and the news items that you see every day, from page 3 with the plastic tits to what's happening in the Black Sea region when they try and cover the Rothschilds' shame. Okay, it's getting cloudy. I'm going to stop speaking because I'm going to go for a walk and enjoy the beautiful universe that my friends created.